Now, welcome back. Now, the recent hot, dry weather and, of course, a lack of rain have seen water levels dip in Gauteng's Vaal Dam. Now, Rand Water says the dam level is at 49%, while it stood at 86% at the same time last year. The Water and Sanitation Department says despite these levels, there's no day zero looming on the horizon. So the assurance followed a tweet from the city of Johannesburg, which said, "Our dams are almost empty. Please do whatever you can to save water." And joining us now is Sputnik Ratau, the spokesperson for the Department of Water and Sanitation. Good morning and thanks for coming through.
Good morning, Sakina, and thanks for having us again.
So let's try and clear up the confusion first and foremost. The Department of Water and Sanitation saying, no need to really worry about the levels, the dam water levels. And then the city of Joburg putting out a tweet saying, well, we are concerned about this particular scenario. So what is going on?
I think, Sakina, in the bigger scheme of things, as South Africans, we all have to be concerned. I think the issue of water scarcity is something that is not new. It's something that we have to begin to live with and to accept. But I think in this context, there is the issue about the Vaal Dam being below 50%, which is a fact. And as if with the Vaal Dam being below 50%, it implies that Gauteng will not have water. But we forget that the Vaal Dam is but one of 14 dams within the integrated Vaal River system, which is the system actually which is responsible for water availability. And it includes the Vaal Dam. So that is why we're saying the fact that the Vaal Dam is below 50 does not imply that the system is collapsing. We are nowhere near there. And that is what we are saying. Whereas when we look at taking it further to say the city of Joburg, their reservoirs are stressed. Yes, it is a fact. But they are also stressed because of other things, because they've got a reduction. In fact, the municipalities in Gauteng are experiencing a reduction from Groundwater because the systems at Groundwater are under stress. There's a lot more demand on the systems from Groundwater to the municipalities because of high consumption patterns, but other things as well that have come in. If you remember, a few months ago, there was the Eskom substation, I think, that went offline, and it was affecting their treatment plant in Suikerbosch. And there was a felt fire as well that impacted the other treatment plants. So those things implied that the reservoirs that Groundwater is responsible for then had a bit of a shake-up that then impacted on how much they can be able to supply municipalities.
And when you were here last, you spoke to Leanne about the shutdown of the Lesotho Highlands water tunnel. So what sort of impact is that having on dam levels?
The shutdown of the Lesotho Highlands water project tunnel is a planned outage. So there were contingency measures that were put in place. And part of those included ensuring that the amount of water that would have flowed into the system for the 2 months is actually in the system before the shutdown happens. So that was part of the planning that happened, and therefore it is not affecting the amount of water that is in the integrated Vaal River system at the moment. And that work is going on very well. We are expecting that we will be coming back online around the end of November as planned.
So in short, you are saying, yes, we are a water scarce country. Yes, we ought to be concerned about how we actually utilize our water resources, but there's no cause for alarm at this stage.
There is no cause for alarm at this stage, and that is why in terms of the system, we are not even imposing restrictions as such. But it is true. What we would like to emphasize is the fact that water scarcity is a reality that we must face, and that all of us must work towards ensuring that we actually reduce our consumption patterns. It doesn't matter where you are, whether domestic consumption or industry or anywhere else.
And speaking to the buzz phrase of day zero, so you say that day zero is not, it hasn't arrived as yet, but does that imply that if things don't improve weather-wise, that we could be edging towards that type of scenario?
In fact, for us as officials, we don't even deal with the concept of day zero, but we deal with the concept of the system not failing. But maybe let me come back to what if we continue consuming at the rate at which we are doing, and also that the weather doesn't treat us as we would wish it to treat us. But I think we must also put it into context that with the planning that looks at how we then augment the integrated Vaal River system if it does go below certain levels, is that if you remember in 2016, we had to go into our reserve bank of water for the integrated Vaal River system, and that is with the Sterkfontein Dam. That is when we then go there to say, let us then get water from Sterkfontein in order to augment the integrated Vaal River system. If you remember in 2016 November, we went into that because the system was at around 30, 25 and so on and so forth. So we have that backup, which is also, by the way, married to another system that is from the Utugela across the Drakensberg Mountains. So we have those as contingency plans, and that is why we always retain Sterkfontein at above 90. It is at about 91.5 at the moment.
And you talk about the stress that the system is under, given what we are experiencing now with the heat waves, and also the fact that there's so much dust about, and people are just trying to settle the dust, so they might decide to water just to try and mitigate that particular instance. We saw from the weather forecast earlier with Azri, the Western Cape, there's a 100% chance of rain in Cape Town, for example, today. So they may be not so badly affected by that at the moment, but up here in the Highveld, we're having serious problems. So if this situation continues, once again, hypothetically speaking, and as you say, we do have, stress levels of consumption and the reservoirs are stressed, do you have mitigating, plans that would actually take care of this scenario if the rains don't come anytime soon?
Well, we're working in tandem with what the predictions go as well. And we are expecting that we would have below average rainfall somewhere before the middle of December and so on. That would not be enough, obviously, and above average between the middle of December and the end of February, and then obviously tapering off to the end of April when the summer season ends. And those are what we would hope would happen. And even our specialist scientists in the department are predicting the same thing. So that is something that we can't help in terms of what do we do with people that then have to, take care of the other aspect of the dust happening and all of those things. But the only thing probably that we need to look at is when do we use that water? Because if you're going to use it in the middle of the day when it's just going to evaporate immediately, it's not going to help anyway. So the timing as well of when you actually do that is quite critical. Before sunrise, possibly, and just before sunset, so that you can have more of the water settling rather than actually just giving it away in terms of the evaporation rates.
And then also just in terms of those plans to mitigate, I was having a conversation with a professor from the university, Nelson Mandela Bay University, the other day, and he was saying we need to up our game when it comes to how we utilize groundwater, because we don't seem to utilize that optimally.
That is true, and that is why part of what we are looking at long term is how do we make use of that groundwater in order to augment what we basically depend upon as South Africa, that is surface water. But in that as well, there is a measure of caution that we need to get into that, because we can't just go into it. We need to be sure of how much is available, how much we can be able to abstract, because we still have to protect the environment, by the way, because there are other functions for groundwater that are beyond just the abstraction and use, because they also help with balancing the environment. Otherwise, we might end up with sinkholes all over the place if we over abstract and so on. But we also have to say, who uses that groundwater for what. That is why we also have to license some of those users. That is why we have to make sure that if you are even going to use it for private use, but your local municipality has got to know, so that the necessary permits are availed, but also just for us to be able to understand how much is going where. So the issue of groundwater is one of those issues that we are looking at in terms of how can we then look at new sources of water.
Well, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much, Sputnik Ratau, spokesperson for the Department of Water and Sanitation. I guess allaying our fears somewhat with regard to the provision of water, and also the news that we've been hearing about the dam levels, the Vaal Dam in particular, and not to be unnecessarily alarmed by what we have heard. So that brings us up to news time. Leanne standing by.